Hi, I'm Dennis,
Hi, I'm Linda.
and welcome to the Next Gen Business Podcast.
Let's go.
The Next Gen Business Podcast is produced by the Small Business Community Network. Visit them online at www.sbcncanada.org.
Well, Linda, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well. I'm so excited to actually meet this wonderful guest in person. I guess it'd be nice if you could introduce him, Dennis.
Well, David Gilbert is one of the mainstays in the Canadian voiceover industry. He's been involved in the voiceover industry for many years, and he's a wonderful personality. He's lots of great stories to tell, and I actually got to know him several years ago when he became a very, very gracious mentor to me in my voiceover journey.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So I'm very pleased to meet you, David. I've not met you before, so it's lovely to see you. And I was kind of, now we connected on LinkedIn, I was really, really interested in something you said on LinkedIn. And it would appear you care very much about communication. And you said these exact words, let me quote, "If you take just one thing away from reading this, let it be that I am someone who deeply cares about building genuine connections with people and how badly I believe we need to communicate with each other now more than ever on a human-to-human level in today's world." Did you say that, David?
I did say that. I did write it on my profile. I have to give somewhat of a credit to the original seed of that idea was Bev Standing, who's a wonderful voice actor in the Toronto area. Because in a way, I mean, what I do is I help you connect your words to your audience, right? But at a deeper level, we all need to be connected. And I think I just have this philosophy that over the last 15 or so years, 20 years, with the advent of all the new technologies, we've disconnected from each other. And the more we can connect and actually have meaningful conversations, relationships with each other, the more we won't be so divided. Because I think there's more that unites us than divides us. It's just that we get into our tribes and we don't really open our ears to other people. So I'm always open to meeting people, and I've built up a large network on LinkedIn, and I just like to help people and hear their stories. Yeah.
I have to say, David, you've got a wonderful voice. I could listen to you forever. And you're not talking about artificial intelligence, are you, though? This is nothing to do with that taking over a lot of our lives at the moment. This is completely different.
Yeah, and to that point, I heard an excellent retort to that, and I apologize, I can't remember the person's name, but they said that while the current generative AI voices out there, they sound good, but they lack soul. And that really stuck to me. It's like you can have something that sounds good, but we know it's not human. And, I'm old enough of a generation to know about 2001, The Space Odyssey, and HAL 9000 and all that stuff. And I am kind of nervous, not so much in AI taking away my work, because I don't really delve into the low end work. But I'm really concerned that you've got this really crazy advancements in ChatGPT and all the AI stuff, and you've got the Boston Dynamics robotics becoming incredible. When those two things come together, that's what I'm concerned about. So,
Thank you. That's a wonderful answer to my question, isn't it, Dennis?
Absolutely, yeah. David, I was wondering if we could delve back into your past a little bit. No blackmail involved, right? No, I'm just really curious because I know that you're originally from Winnipeg, Manitoba, and that you had an extensive career in sales and marketing before. So could you tell us a little bit about how you made the transition into voiceover and when?
Well, how much time do you have? I'll give this sort of the anthology as quick as I can. So I grew up in Winnipeg, which was 2 seasons, winter and mosquitoes. Very rambunctious kid, loved to watch Saturday morning cartoons and make some very funny voices. And I didn't really do anything much about that. Went on with my life. My dad got transferred to Toronto, so I moved. Obviously, I was 13. 26, I went to Ryerson University, had a professor say, "Oh, you've got a good baritone voice. Have you considered doing radio? Or you should do radio." I'm like, okay. Uh, 19 years old, what the hell do I know? This is like early 90s. So I ended up moving to London, Ontario for a job, and I don't know why or how, but I ended up going into a studio, talked to the owner. He says, "Well, we mostly do corporate videos here, and we bring a gentleman in who went to Juilliard." I'm like, okay, thanks. I'll just shelve that dream because I hadn't even done a high school play at that point. And off I went into consumer packaged goods. I mimicked my dad's career by starting in buying. And in fact, my dad's old boss from 20 years before hired me at the company in London. So that was really kind of a weird, strange thing. Had a kid, moved back to Toronto. Other sales and marketing jobs. 2016, I was downsized from the company I was at. And combination of my buddy saying, "Hey, what about that radio thing?" And my daughter was taking acting lessons, and the coach, or whatever you want to call him, the teacher says, "Hey, well, you've got a good voice. Have you considered doing voiceover?" I'm like, "No." And I went home that night and told what's voiceover? How to get started? And so back then, when you needed a voiceover for something, it was expensive. It was a union talent. It was a studio, and blah blah blah. Fast forward 20 years, now there's all this non-union work, and you can do it from your home studio and all these different genres. And so I thought, okay, well, this is something I feel like I can get away from the corporate rat race. So I took my severance, my savings, and jumped right in. So now that gives me a little bit of a different perspective to what I'm doing. I almost feel like, and I'm not, somebody else has something similar. I feel like an entrepreneur who does voiceover, as opposed to a voice actor who's an entrepreneur, because I have that critical thinking mindset, the creative mindset that I see connections between different things. And I think we talked, Dennis, how I was talking about your expertise and going, well, there's an opportunity there if you connect those dots. So I said, when I left one job years ago to become I switched sides of the table from being a buyer to a seller. I said I knew what not to do. I just had to learn what to do. So that's the same with this. I knew sort of the business stuff and accounting and all that fun stuff. I just need to learn how to talk without coming across like that, which nobody wants to hear, right? So
You're funny.
I thank you very much.
In a nice way. That was a great question, Dennis. I think we've got to the bottom of how we became here. So I'm not a voiceover person. I'm a motivational speaker. I'm from England. I've got a weird accent. Dennis, on the other hand, when I first met Dennis, I still love your voice, Dennis, don't I? And when he told me he also delves into the voiceover, I think that's wonderful, because I think you must have to have a certain kind of voice, David. You know what I mean?
Honestly speaking, your voice, the quality of your voice, this thing here, this sort of the whole thing, that's 10 to 15% of your success. Because if you don't know, I could hand you a $200 hammer. If you use the same way as the dollar store hammer, it's still a hammer, right? If you don't know how to use it, if you don't know how to take the most salesy copy ever, introducing save now, and make it sound like you're talking to Dennis on the couch, it doesn't matter. So it's how you sound is really a function. And I pull this from Dave Walsh. He has a True Tell method. It's basically a formula. How you sound is an equation of what are you saying, who are you saying it to, why are you saying it, all the who, what, when, where, why stuff. If you don't have that, look at all the actors you see on big movies that you're engrossed in the character. They're just saying words. Their voices are not necessarily good or bad. It's just that you believe that they are that character?
I'd be sorry for interrupting. I'd be no good at this because I only just had to read what I got off LinkedIn for you, and I felt it wasn't good for me. Whereas
That's just training.
I prefer to just jump on the stage and, be the keynote speaker, tell my stories, do what, and then it's more natural for me. I had a TV show on Rogers, and they tried to get me and my co-host to read this introduction, to introduce ourselves, and it was much more natural when we didn't have to do that. Whereas Dennis, you're much better at this, aren't you, Dennis?
I wouldn't necessarily say that, Linda. I think you're fine. I actually, no, really. I'm not trying to butter you up. I really do think, I find it kind of, I guess we're all our own worst critics because for me, you seem like very professional when you've got a camera on you.
But I don't use a script.
So here's a perfect example. If you were to tell me a bunch of stories about your family and I wrote you out a script, right? And you had 2 presentations of 5 minutes each. One is hop on stage, talk about your family. The other one, you had to read my words, right? You probably, without practice, would stumble all over the place reading my words because they're not your words. But when you're able to read the words and make it sound like your words, then it'll sound like off the cuff. Oh my God. And my cousin Edith, wow, has she ever, but it's a skill. I saw Simon Sinek talk one time in Toronto. He got asked how, and this is more of introvert extrovert, but the part I was going to get to is how can you, if you say you're an introvert, how can you stand in front of 5,000 people and give talks? He says that's public speaking is a learned skill, right? It's a learned skill. You can learn how to speak in public. And there's Toastmasters and other organizations that do that.
I disagree, though. Seriously, I'm jumping in again. I've seen many Toastmasters on stage, and they are so stiff and they're like robots. I think the best speakers I've ever heard and I really admire in my, before COVID when I was, traveling the world speaking, are the ones who are not trained and are natural because they know what they sound like and they know why they're doing it. Now, I've heard that guy speak, but I didn't know he was trained in any way.
It's not so much trained. It's you practice it. Even I saw, what's his name? Bouchard is a business guy. Not Lucien, American guy. Anyways, and the way he talks, the way he tells his spiel is as a story, right? And he reaches a pivot point and he sort of goes off on a tangent, comes back, and it continues the story. So if you practice that hour or 45-minute talk, not necessarily every single word. Like I did this a storytelling class at Second City, and you just learn techniques to, I mean, you could tell a story of your life without having to have any script, or like you can get up on stage in 45 minutes from childhood to today.
Yeah, I think for me it's more natural because I'm not really a salesperson. I'm not selling anything. I'm either talking about health and wellness or business or branding. So I'm going to disagree with that. I think you'd need more training for what you guys excel at. And yes, I think you do excel at it, Dennis. And I know you did. I think if I wanted to do what you guys do, then I would need the training. Like I had to stand up on stage in England and do had some words in a play, and I couldn't do it. It's just not my comfort zone. So I'm not disagreeing that some people need to be trained, but I'm a natural speaker. I'm a conversational speaker. So, but if I was doing what you were doing, I'd be going, yes, if you take just one thing, and then my voice would change and I'd sound posh and it wouldn't be me. So, Dennis, what is it you admire very much about David? Because he's actually doing exactly, what he's good at and what you are building up to make your full-time career. What is it you think you admire the most about what David is doing or has done?
Well, I think the main thing is, and what attracted me to him initially was his approachability and the sense that he still very much, sorry to make you feel embarrassed, David. No, I just get the impression like you've got your feet on the ground still, because as with anything connected to kind of broadcasting or entertainment, there's always this sense in which it takes people away from their authenticity, right? And whereas I feel with David, he's very much like a very approachable, personable person who values human connections, right? So I felt very easy.
I agree. And also, coming on our show when you're so busy, I mean, but then again, I could say that about anybody who comes on any of my shows and this show, which is Dennis's as well. And I think that's why you're successful, because you're so approachable and you don't think you're God or something, you know why you're doing it, you're passionate about it, but you haven't kind of turned into the royal family and we have to kind of, bow down to you.
Hey, when I'm making seven figures, we may have a different conversation. You may have to pay for my time. I don't know.
I love your honesty and your transparency, don't you, Dennis?
Yes, yeah. Well,
I've always been like this. It's not something I put on. It's not something I try to do. And to your point earlier, authenticity, if you're speaking from a place of your own true self, then it comes out naturally, right? If as soon as you try to sell me something or tell me something, I mean, I can sense it myself sometimes if I'm doing an e-learning project and like my voice goes higher to try and say, this is what's important to you. No. And I don't want to go lower because then it sounds like I'm trying to, but it's having that, like, this sound, this is me, this is my sound. And this is my voice. The sound is whatever. But I think if we in general, like when you're talking to people, and if we have really strong BS meters, we know when we're being lied to, sold to, whatever. But if you come across as being very authentic and you, Dennis, and you're talking to people, they will connect. You'll be able to connect with them. They know that you're not trying to pull something over their eyes. So
can I just ask you a question related to that? Like, if you were to assess the one quality that you had that allowed you to be a success when you first got into voiceover, because I realize, of course, your sales and marketing background really stood you in good stead. But what was it about your personality, or what particular skill set did you have apart from that, which allowed you to make a success of this?
I went through a period. One thing I'd say is patience. Once I learned that patience is important, but it wasn't until the late summer of 2016 when because I was in a corporate environment when I didn't have to enunciate clearly, so I had a bit of a slurry voice. My demo producer coach got me hooked up with a vocal coach, beautiful woman, Denise Woods, and she's on set with Denzel Washington and all these like celebrities doing because she helps them with dialects and whatnot. So anyways, I had 4 sessions with her. In the second session, she goes to me, David, do you have a lot of stress in your life? I'm like, yeah, yeah, because I'm trying to like push the boulder up a hill. And she goes, I can hear it. And I'm like, oh. So she said, anything that's here is coming out here. And immediately I thought, okay, all those past mental health demons that I've been pushing aside, I got to deal with. So I started to get some mental health looked at. And it wasn't until then, I've probably learned more about myself in the last 5 to 6 years than I had in the previous many. So self-awareness, if you don't even know what's driving you and why you're doing the things you're doing, then you can't be in that calm state. And of course, I don't do meditation, but I know it's supposed to be good and blah, blah, blah. But, it's if you don't have that, once you have more of it, I understand, oh, this is why I'm doing that. I understood what my career was. I was a passenger on my bus. I wasn't driving the bus. I was a passenger. I was always leaving something instead of going to something. So all this stuff together, plus understanding the patience. And if I told myself 7 years ago, hey, it's going to take longer than you think. Relax, like just chill out. Don't rush things. As soon as you start to rush things, things don't work out.
So, how do you get your clients? I mean, in the early days, I'm sure you reached out. Do you have like an organization? Like I have a speakers bureau, get me clients. So, is that the same thing for you? Someone gets you the clients?
Now, in the voiceover business, you ask 100 voice actors, you'll get 100 different answers. And there isn't one way to get voice work. There are casting sites, there are agents, there's direct marketing, there is, a number of different avenues. I have focused on networking and direct marketing. So reaching out directly to people. That's how I built up, a network on LinkedIn of over 14,000 connections, and I've attended over 300 in-person events. So I focused on that. Other people I know do extremely well on online casting sites. I know some people who get the vast majority of their business through agents. There's no one. I think if you dedicate the time to any avenue, then you'll be successful in that avenue because you're putting the time, right? So you're using speaker guild or speaker of that then that's going to get you work.
If there are any new speakers out there listening to this, sorry, not speakers, voiceover people who want to grow the business and be paid for it. I mean, I often tell the up and coming, speakers, well, I did a lot of free before people recognise I was worth paying. So is it the same in your industry? They're going to have to do some free stuff, or can they jump in and be paid immediately?
Free stuff is a double-edged sword because yes, I would only even consider doing pro bono stuff. If it was for an organization that literally had no money, that it was important to my core being, right? So there's a connection there, and I'm doing them a favor, not like an ongoing thing. I know that if I ever wanted to go union, and I'm non-union myself, that I would have to be at such a level, right, to compete with them, because I'd be auditioning with people who have been in the business for 15, 20 years, 25 years. So the first thing I ever suggest, and I get 2 or 3 emails a week, hey, I'd like to get into voiceover. What do I do? I say, first, go get some acting lessons. Get a good, because voice acting. It's like you're building a house. You got to build a good foundation first. You don't start looking at the drapes and go, oh, look at those drapes. No. What microphone should I buy? Well, how many acting lessons have you had? Well, none. Forget the microphone, right? Get some voice acting, get some acting lessons, take some improv classes. I went to the Second City program, and then get involved in the community. And once you get involved, you'll meet people. That's how we met, and then you hear, okay, what are you doing? Where are you getting coaching from? And then you get voice acting class. Then you get the best mic. Then you figure out where you're going to record, because I'm a big proponent of the location, the booth area. It doesn't have to be a $4,000 whisper room. Just a quiet spot. If it's your walk-in closet, fine. Find the space first. Then you get the microphone, then you get the other stuff. So you build from there. You don't say, well, I got to start what other business can you start for less than $1,000? Like that. I mean, to get started, you don't have to go out and buy an expensive booth or expensive microphones. And
You've ticked all my boxes. Because you say exactly what we're in different lines of work. But basically, you've talked about the networking, the connecting, the building relationships. Don't spend too much money in the beginning. You don't have to reach out to community. Dennis, I love this guy. Why have you been hiding him from me? And why have we never connected on LinkedIn before? This is ridiculous. So, Dennis, I'm guessing, in a way, David is one of your mentors, or would that be a presumption for me to make?
Yeah, no, he definitely is. He's a mentor, and
we're due for a call. I'm holding you accountable. We're due for a call.
yes, indeed, right. Also a role model as well, because it's really quite good the way in which he is able to have the balance between the art of voiceover and also the business of voiceover. And a lot of people don't get the balance right? So he's a very good.
It's funny you say that, because I've heard the phrase voiceovers as opposed to on-screen acting is a blend of art and commerce. right? You've got the performance, but you have the business. You're not going to have that with an on-screen actor going to one of my clients is a architectural glass manufacturer in Montreal. An actor wouldn't go there and go, "Hi, I want to be." They wouldn't understand they need a voice for a glazing. How to install this glass. The glass. That's not in their forte. They're like, "Where's an audition? Where's the next casting call?" Right? So it's a combination because you have a commercial. It's mostly a commercial aspect, but you also have to have the acting side. So
I could listen to you all night. I think, Dennis, you're going to have one last question, and we're going to have to let this busy man go, because I could listen to you all night. You're amazing. You really are. Wow.
Well, I'd like to. I was going to ask you about the potential threats to the voiceover industry, but I think you already touched on that with AI. So, what I am going to say is, what is your vision or your prognosis for where voiceover is going into the future?
it's a good question. I may not have the pulse of the whole industry, but I can see AI taking up a lot of the low value stuff. But when there's somebody's producing some content, now I know I'm not naive. What I do is except for radio and maybe telephony, it's always the last thing of some project. It's the last thing of an e-learning. It's the last thing of a corporate video. It's the last thing of a TV commercial. It's the last thing that's done. The producers, directors who are producing the content, who want that human to human connection, will always go for humans. It will be because it's been a crazy few years with thousands of people coming into the industry because of COVID, and also stage and screen actors over through COVID set up home studios because they were out of work for 2 years. There's so many more talent, but from what I hear, there's so much more work between all these different channels, YouTube channels and whatnot. So I think there's still going to be, knock on wood, a nice healthy industry 10 years from now. It better be, because I need to be working 10 years now. But it'll change. And who knows what kind of, all the things we see today, Netflix, Amazon, all these companies, they didn't exist 20 years ago. So who knows what's going to happen 10 or 15 or 20 years from now? But I still think the human connection, which it all boils down to, if a company or an organization wants to connect with an audience, they're going to need humans in some aspect, whether or not it's on screen or voice. They're going to need humans. So
that was a wonderful, wonderful question. So I normally say thank you. Thank you, David. I normally say thank you first, and it was absolutely wonderful. So it is good night from me.
And good night from me.
And thank you from me.
Thanks for listening. Check us out at www.nextgenbusinesspodcast.com.